All right, I think I just have shared agenda in chat. Welcome to EIPIP Meeting 59. This looks like a small agenda for today's meeting. The first item that is added here is clarify how to use ERC versus EIP to refer to different EIPs. This has been collected by Tim Baker's comment on the last meeting agenda. So yeah, we have been discussing about this thing, like we see that people are sometimes referring it as ERC and sometimes referring it as EIP. Is there any standard guideline that editors here would like to share it with the rest of the community to maybe follow?
So for the community, I don't particularly care. For the EIP's repo, we always use EIP, never ERC.
So for EIP repo, I have this question that I'm not sure. I think I would like to clarify it for myself as well. Like many times when we are referring to any ERC category proposal in another EIP, we have tried to fix this in EIP1 that it has to be referred as EIP even if it is an ERC. For example, EIP 20 instead of ERC 20. But what are the guidelines for an author if they are trying to refer to an ERC category EIP in their proposal?
So they should put, the only place that the ERC would go is in the header field when it's asking for the category of a standard track EIP. And so you just put ERC there. Everywhere else, though, in the EIP itself, if you're referring to other EIPs, if you're linking, they should all be EIP.
I don't know if any other EIP editor has other thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, oh, can you still hear me? I might have just closed my mic off.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, my mic's not even connected. I'm on my headphones. Sorry. I mean, I feel like ERC has sort of been used a lot by the community, and it's kind of difficult now to just say, if you want to refer to ERC 20, it's now EIP 20. I think that
I have a problem
there's
with
just a lot more.
Talking about in the documents or just like in conversation?
I mean, we can't really control people doing conversation, but I think that it just adds confusion if, like, in an already confusing process, if now these things that they talk about and it is published in every place, that it's ERC 721, ERC 20, ERC 1155, and now all of a sudden they're only EIPs. And so it's just like people start questioning, like, why is this the case? And I just don't, it seems a little unnecessary.
Are you lobbying to change it so when people refer to an ERC within the EIP's repo, they now do ERC dash number, and then the link is?
I mean, now, like, that's how it was for a long time, even though it wasn't encoded in EIP1. And I think we only started enforcing it pretty recently. Like most historical EIPs refer to other ERCs as that prefix ERC.
So I don't feel strongly about this. If people have a strong opinion on wanting to have the ERC instead of EIP, I'm fine with it, but we should definitely update the rules if that's the case. Do we want to name the EIPs ERC dash number, or keep them EIP in the file name?
Like the file? Oh, I mean, yeah, that would make sense. But Lord, I don't know what things that'll break. That's kind of hard to do at this point too, because people have linked to the GitHub. And so now we break that.
Does anyone feel strongly about keeping the EIP naming convention? Or does everybody don't care, or ERC?
Actually, I am in favor of keeping it EIP because, this is an opportunity that we can probably take it to educate people that EIPs and ERCs are not different. ERC is a category, but it's not a type individually. That is as good as any other EIP, like networking interface and core. Definitely the process can be a little different. The application can be different, but that is part of Ethereum repository, and that has been forever. EIP 20, people started calling it for their convenience, but still the repository calls it EIP 20. And at the time when it was listed as EIP 20. It was verbose that they started calling it ERC. So if we cannot control what people would like to say, let it be ERC, but for documentation purposes, if we start mentioning it as EIP, maybe in long run people will learn about the process and come around. Because at this point, what I feel that changing EIP 20 to ERC 20 on GitHub repository would be a big deal. We have to write a bot altogether to change this process, to get it renamed based on the category. Until we find that, this is my feeling. I'm like more inclined towards it, but again, I'm not an EIP editor, so I'll leave it on the group. Do we see hope of getting EIP written as ERC on the naming, as in header I'm talking about in future?
As in what?
For example, if we open EIP 20, like eips.ethereum.org/20 EIP 20, it is EIP 20. How convenient or how easy it is to change it to ERC 20.
On ethereum.org?
That's right.
It's very easy.
Even during the draft of the proposal, like when it is drafted.
Oh, you mean eeps.ethereum.org, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So the making things show up differently on ethereum.org isn't too hard. It just requires a little bit of engineering elbow grease to tell Jekyll to do the right transformation when it's compiling. However, github.com/ethereum/EIPs, that one is significantly harder because people do link to that, and that one we do not have control over redirects.
So what did people link to? When you change a file name in GitHub, I guess it'll break the path, right?
Yeah, so we tell everybody to use relative length in EIPs, meaning /EIP.
Oh,
and
yes.
That way, it doesn't matter what rendering system we use. Like, it renders in GitHub Markdown, and it renders in EIPs.ethereum.org, and it renders on random third-party sites that mirror.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
so
I think
renaming files is problematic at best.
Yeah.
Changing how we go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
So renaming files is problematic, and I would advise against that just because it's going to be a huge amount of work and pain to do so. But I don't really have a problem with changing our rules on how people title their links. So right now we tell them your link must be named EIP-120. I'm fine with telling them you can name it ERC-20, but it's still going to link to /EIP-20.md.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think like changing all the links and whatnot is like a huge waste of time, and like no one's died that ERC-20 is -EIP-20. I feel like if it's easy to change also the title, like not if that doesn't break the bot, right? Like it's kind of neat if like it can link to if the title could be like ERC-20, but not a strong opinion there. I would definitely not take on like technical debt of any kind to make this work though. Or I guess we
When you
can't
say
really
title,
take
what do
on
you mean?
So like the H1 header, like the first thing in the markdown file, can that be called like ERC20 without breaking? I wouldn't, by the way, I wouldn't, I think it would be weird to change it for EIPs that are final. So like, I think it would be like a going forward thing, like, or anything that's in draft or review, I guess. It would be weird to now change EIP20, but like, if I have a new EIP, can I just title it ERCX and not break things?
So, I mean, maybe I'm generally apprehensive about leaving the repository in a half and half state if we can avoid it. I would ideally like to hear a pretty compelling argument for why this will have very significant positive impact in order to support having like half of the EIPs be ERC dash and half of them be EIP dash. That feels like it would add a lot of confusion.
I would agree.
Okay,
And if we
I don't care that much. Yep.
Yeah, because if we look at the broader structure, the structure is there are three different types. One is a meta, one is a standard, and the third one is informational. And under standard, we have four different categories: code, networking, interface, and ERC. So let's be, I mean, if we are planning to change, it will altogether affect the entire hierarchy, how it has been defined in the first place. And if I understand correct, changing EIP-20 token standard, that is something that is coming automatically with the bot for all EIPs, irrespective of category and type, and that is going to be a tedious job to change it, especially for ERC category at this point of time. And I'm not sure how much benefit do we get after changing this. So the question I think I was trying to ask here, that Micah has very well put it into the chat, that what do we want people to be referring it to, ERC20, which will end up as EIP20.md, or do we want it to be written as EIP20? That will again end up as EIP-20.md. So in communication, if people are using ERC, that is not that we can control, but as a group who are trying to improve the process, what we can control is the documentation part. So from this group, it will be interesting to understand what do people think about the recommended documentation terms here. Like, should it be ERC20 or should it be EIP20? I mean, we can definitely allow both, but having a standard would be nice to have.
It sounds like people want the link titles to be ERC20. I'm like, and as I mentioned, I'm okay with that. That's what people want. Just need to update EIP1.
Cool. So Sam votes for EIP. Right. Okay. Maybe this is something that, yeah, please go ahead.
Why doesn't someone who wants to make this change to EIP1 make the change, we can discuss further on the PR? So submit a PR to change the docs to say, if you're linking to an ERC, use the ERC title, linking to an EIP, use the EIP title, and then we can continue formulating arguments in that thread.
That makes sense. That's exactly what I was trying to propose here. What I can do, I will create an issue and I will try to put it over there so we can collect feedback from all other EIP editors who are not present on this call. And maybe if community want to participate, we can also get their feedback. So the question that I'm going to put it over there, like, how do we want to refer to an EIP in the documentation part, especially? We are not controlling how people want to communicate. Any final comment before we move on to the next topic? Cool. So the next item listed here is a meta EIP for executable spec process for core EIPs. If I remember correctly, in the last meeting, we discussed about that we would be moving ahead with whatever was proposed as executable specs for core EIPs process. I'm not sure if either Tim, Sam, you got time to maybe come up with a meta EIP? Wondering if there are any updates on that side.
There is, but I don't think it's quite final. So I sent something to Sam last week. And
Yeah,
then
that's been my bad.
no, sorry, no, yeah, and I just haven't even thought about it since before I saw this call on my agenda. So I basically Sam had a proposal. I guess I originally had a proposal, counter proposal. I sent like a counter proposal, and basically it's quite close to like what Sam had. There's two changes, I guess. One is it proposes two paths. Either we keep EIP as the place to write the English stuff, or or Sam's approach, which was we don't do that. So it kind of shows what the process would look like on both sides, with like some pros and cons. That's the bit hopefully Sam can also like unbias a bit more. And I think that's like the biggest question. That's probably like probably something we just want to get client devs input on, and then like whatever they choose it probably makes sense there. And then the other smaller change is that Sam's proposal would have new EIPs. The branch name would be like EIPs / the actual EIP number / a fork that it was targeting. I propose that we don't have like a target fork on an EIP when it gets proposed. Because if you imagine something like take 3074, for example, you first propose it, I don't know, for like Berlin, then London, then Shanghai, and it's weird. You would just want to have like a single branch that tracks this proposal rather than having like EIP / 3074 / Berlin, and then EIP / 3074 / London, and so on. It seems a bit weird. So it seems like it's just a bit cleaner to like have EIP / the number, and then like it's up to the EIP champion to rebase their branch off like a master or whatever the fork is, if they want to then keep putting it forward. And I think that kind of matches like the current EIP process. Like if you have a change and it doesn't go in a hard fork, and then some changes happen in this hard fork that affect your EIP, then we expect people to update their EIP. They don't necessarily like create a new EIP. And they would create a new EIP in the case where like the changes are so significant that like it doesn't make sense anymore. And I feel like this could work here too. So yeah, basically just changes that and proposes a world where like we do keep we do keep the EIPs repo for naming and non specification descriptions. And I think, yeah, sorry. And after this, I think if we have like rough agreement here, like I would be up. I don't know if there's going to be time on the next core devs. We've been running out of time quite frequently, but I think in the next core dev call or two, it just might be good to take 5 minutes to like ask for feedback about that. And I guess not only from EL devs, like also from CL devs, because yeah, this would obviously affect if they if they need to actually write EIPs or whatnot.
I feel like that would be a good idea. Maybe first we can have the draft of the meta EIP with the changes that you just mentioned. I can see that in the HackMD file. It is there, I believe, right? You have mentioned that.
Yeah. I think we do need to resolve like, do we keep the EIP repo or not? Because it's like it would be a very weird draft now, because it's basically it's almost like it'd have to be two different proposals, and I'd rather we just get clear feedback from client devs and we can narrow it down to one and like refine that spec.
Does it really affect client devs where the EIPs live? Like, is that something they even have an opinion on?
I don't know if it will affect. I mean, first, they do write a lot of EIPs, so like to that level it affects. I think they might have opinions about like, I don't know, like even if they're not directly affected, like what's better. I don't write I don't write the EIPs, and I have a strong opinion about what's better. So, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe not that
Having an
much.
opinion is unrelated to whether it affects you or not.
Right, but I guess client devs are like the main stakeholders of like the core EIP process, I guess.
If the question is like whether we need an EIP repo or not, I feel like either, I mean, like irrespective of the answer, yes or no, they would need a place where they can start making pull requests, and EIP repo
Oh,
will
yes.
be there for other proposals. Maybe core EIP people will not be using that. But again, I feel like, I mean, it's my personal feeling that having it somewhere placed, if not the EIP repo, if creating a separate repo for that, that would be important to note.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I think Sam and I agree that there needs to be like a description. Basically, all the stuff that's in the core EIP still needs to happen. And the question is, do we still call those core EIPs and have them in the EIP repos, or do we just put them coupled in the executable specs repo? And that's basically the question. Yeah.
And just for the record, for those who are new, I'm strongly in favor of keeping everything in the executable specs repo, not splitting.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So you said not splitting, as in putting core like ERCs in the execution specs repository, or do you mean not splitting the implementation from the documentation?
Yeah, don't split the documentation from the implementation. I think it should live in the same place, which I think should be this specs repo.
I think the my opinion for like the EIPs is just like, it's such a strong, like there's such a strong like community awareness around it. Like, I mean, other blockchains literally call their stuff like ERC20 and EIP 1559. And like, yeah, it's.
I'm of the
Yeah,
opinion that Ethereum is young enough, and if we are successful, it will last long enough that we should be making long-term decisions, not beholden to history. And like our reasoning should be, what do we want things to look like in 20 years, not what's
I
convenient
still want
today.
us to have the EIP thing. Like, I like that they're called like Ethereum improvement proposals. I think like CLIP or like ELIP, that's just like really, I don't know.
I can
good.
maybe propose a middle path here. I think it is inspired by Tim's earlier thought. Even I am in I find it good when people find these proposals, because it's become way easier to communicate it with community and get feedback on just one individual topic that we want to share about, just like 1559. Maybe what we can do is like earlier we used to have meta EIP for upgrades, right? And it was like all together their meta EIP, but we started bringing them together in upgrade.md, and we keep that in execution specs repository. If people like the group decides to not use current EIP repository for future core proposals, when it is finalized, we can maybe create a .md file of that and bring it to the repository for people to refer to. What do people think about it? I mean, like not until it is finalized, but once it is finalized, then we bring it here.
Yeah, the problem is you talk about it most when it's not final, right? Like, and the other thing, the other big challenge with this stuff is EIPs that span both the EL and CL. It's really nice to have a single name to talk about it. Like, for example, take like EIP 4844. We're going to have like talked about it for a year before it goes live, at least. And it's almost like after that, it doesn't really matter, because like it's live, it's part of Ethereum. And it's like 90% of the discussion happens like before the thing goes live. But anyways, I don't want to take up this entire call to like go on the pros and cons. I do think it would be good. I don't know if anyone can edit this note. I've given Sam edit access, but I think like if we could have like, if people want to help with the pros and cons list at the end, that's probably a good thing that we can just then share with like client devs and get some more feedback there. Yeah. And I don't know how we make the decision when, if there's like strong disagreement within the client devs as well. I don't know how we make the decision, but at least we'll know that there's strong disagreement there.
Okay, if we have to summarize it for note-taking people, at this point, like just from the present participants, we are agreeing like to move the specs directly to the executable spec and not be a part of present EIP repository. Is that a correct summary, Tim?
Yeah, I think we all agreed previously that that was the best direction. And then the question is, how do we actually do that? And I don't know, I guess, does anyone disagree that asking client devs once we've like spent a bit more time on this doc is the right next step?
I think it is a reasonable next step.
Least worse.
Yeah, so I think the thing that I'm just concerned about is that it's one of these things that asking more people, I don't think is going to bring us clarity. And so I'm not against asking more people, and I want more people to be involved, and I'm a fan of all that. But I don't think that's actually going to help us come to a conclusion. I am pretty confident that you're going to end up with some core devs being passionately on one side, some passionately on the other side, and some kind of don't really care, and somewhere in the middle. And so it would be nice if we could come up with like a plan for how we make a decision under the assumption that the core devs aren't going to magically solve this for us.
If you can solve that, you've solved a lot of Ethereum governance issues.
Yes, I am very familiar with the generalized predicament that we're in.
you let me know. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, but I think it's probably worthwhile to actually go through that step and then have at least a little more information when you need to sort through it. And if the general feeling from the core devs is like, we don't care, then I guess we make a decision here. And
one concern I have with going to the core devs is that I don't think that there's consensus on even similar opinions to Greg's are going to be like some of the core devs are going to express that, and I don't think adding more people to the mix is going to help at all.
So okay, so yeah, and so are you saying like we should?
I'm not saying anything really. Yeah. I'm just saying I don't think we're going to get more consensus out of this.
I think, yeah, I'm on the fence. Yeah.
I think when
I don't know.
I
don't think we'll get more consensus. We'll get maybe more information. Yeah, but I agree. It might not be consensus.
I agree that moving towards the ACD meeting would be the right next step. But as Sam's concern, I have the similar concern, and I would prefer reaching out to them when we have a draft of like Meta E proposing like this is our proposal. The question should be like, okay, this is what we are proposing, and the question should not go back to whether we should do this or not in the first place. So until we have that like draft form of Meta E, we can probably hold reaching them.
Yeah, that is a good point. That if we show up with a complete plan, I think we're more likely to get buy-in and consensus rapidly than if you show up asking questions. What do you guys think we should do? You show up, we want to do this. Is anyone opposed? I think you're more likely to get positive feedback than we'd like to change some things. What do you guys think we should change, etc.
You think? I don't know. I'm not convinced, but I can be. But yeah, I guess because this is like a big change, it's like, if I think it's like worse to come in there and be like, okay, we're just gonna like stop using core EIPs rather than saying like, we want to do an executable spec, and there's like pretty general, I think, consensus across that. Like, sure, some people disagree, but it feels to me like it's more of like an 80-20 situation than like 50-50. At least from the last conversation we had on awkward devs, which was already a while back. But then it's like saying, okay, we want to do that. Do like, I don't know. I feel like it's a reasonable question to ask. Like, are you guys okay removing, like, stop not using core EIPs anymore? Or are you not?
Wondering if that can be solved with tweet. Tim's, your tweet gets more responses. So
No, I would not go to Twitter to solve this.
It's too specific, I think.
Yeah, no, and yeah, and I think some of the like, I think, the best feedback I remember from the last discussion was when Martin said that like a bunch of core EIPs are underspecified, and this spec actually forces people to literally specify in code what they want. And like, I think it's like, yeah, the quality of the feedback you get, like, to me, that was like, if I was on the fence, that was the thing that was like, okay, if we solve this problem for Martin, like, the executable spec will have been worth it. And there's not really a strong counter argument. So maybe my hope is, like, by having this conversation on awkward devs, there's something of that vein with regards to like EIPs versus not that comes out, and then it's just like a no-brainer. But maybe that's too optimistic. I don't know. It seems like I'm the only person who wants to discuss this on the call, so I don't want to like force a discussion either.
okay. So maybe we can give another EIPIP meeting to discuss this further before we reach out to ACD.
I think, yeah, I think that's all right, especially if, I don't know, if people think that in the next couple of weeks, they might look at this proposal and like leave some comments or changes. I think it's, yeah, it's totally fine to wait 2 more weeks. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe we'll try to share more of this HackMD file to people and try to collect more feedback on that. Cool. I'll try to bring this in the next meeting. Moving on to item number 3, that is EIP bots related discussion. I don't see Jose on the call, but it looks like Jose got stuck somewhere in testing part, and he is having hard time creating the testing environment for some of the issues that he is proposing solution to. And also, I haven't heard from the guy on the EIPV side. I wonder, like, is there anyone else, or is there anything that Foundation can maybe help out with?
I'm sorry.
You're asking if there's work to be done? If so, yes.
I'm asking if we can get more resources for this, because I haven't seen any progress on EIPV issue from the resource, the Foundation side. Okay, let me try to rephrase my question. So I wanted to check if we can get some help or some support from any dev who is maybe available to help out with bot, EIP bot, present bot to solve issues. There are a lot of open issues and pull requests as well, but the resource from Catridis who was working on the improving the bot, he is stuck with the testing environment, and he is looking for some help.
So this is on the TypeScript bot, right?
That's right.
Okay. So I can't help with that. I have no idea how to set up TypeScript environments. If somebody's working on EIPV, I can probably help with that. I don't know if anybody else does TypeScript, but
yeah, for EIPV, if I remember correctly, we had someone join in a few weeks ago, and we were hoping to get some updates. I'm not sure. I did not receive any feedback, and I haven't seen any improvement there. So maybe we'll try to reach out to them again. And if not, then if someone from the community is willing to look into the EIPV bot issues, please reach us. So Sam, for the TypeScript bot, is it okay that I recommend that resource to reach out to you for help, whatever is needed?
No, absolutely not. I can't help with TypeScript. I know nothing about it.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. Then I got it wrong. My bad. We'll see if we get any further update in the next meeting. Let's move on. The next one is EIP's Insight. I see a lot of improvement this month. There are a lot of activities. In June, we received 3 networking EIPs as final EIP, and 1 ERC category proposal has been moved to final. In addition to that, there are 9 EIPs in draft that have been added new, and 1 EIP in informational category has been added as a living status. So this would be the second living EIP after EIP 1, because EIP 1 was the only living EIP so far. There are some small changes to, not some, there is just one minor change to EIP 681, which was a final EIP. We received a new EIP editor, so we are now 5 EIP editors. So things are moving smoothly and we are having less issues and pull requests for review. There are a few graphs and charts and more information available on EIP's Insight. So please check out the link added for details on it. I earlier mentioned in one of the meetings that I'm also planning to have a separate website where we can have these charts and graphs directly getting it from the GitHub repository. I remember Micah mentioning that instead of going ahead with API, we should maybe able to create bot. I just wanted to provide some update on that side. Micah, it seems like we are having some trouble creating bot right away. So at the moment, what we are trying to do is parse data directly from the EIPs.md file from there and collect values to share different charts. That would be more than what is currently being shown in this hackmd file. So yeah.
Which HackMD file?
EIPs.md on GitHub repository, EIPS GitHub repository. So that's the approach that we are currently taking, like collecting data directly from there and creating a temporary database to store data on everyday basis. We are still working on how to automate the entire process. We are working towards it, and I'll be reaching out to the group and EIP editors if there are any help needed on that side. Just wanted to provide this update. Moving on to EIP's editor apprenticeship meeting. We had meeting number 20 yesterday. The recording is now available. Now we are trying to look into the proposals, all especially ERC category proposal, because we have been receiving a lot of requests from ERC authors that they need help. So if any author is new and they want to discuss anything in a specific, you are welcome to join the EIP editors apprenticeship meeting and share the questions with the EIP editors. The next meeting will be 2 weeks on Tuesday. Item number 6 is review action item from the previous meeting. Contributors permission to EIP GitHub repo for SAM.
Stop trying to give me that.
Okay, fine. Then I can probably remove this because even I am not able to get to my resource. I haven't heard back from him in past 1 month because it's been over two EIPIP meetings and I did not receive any response from there. So I wonder, like anyone from the foundation, I don't know, they would be able to help out with any of the future needs for that. So maybe Tim and now Light Client, if you guys have any reach on DevOps side for future help, maybe we can use that. But Sam, if you are fine with it, I can remove this thing. Anyway, I haven't received
Oh,
it.
please. Yeah, I absolutely don't want contributor status.
Okay. Next is Pooja will collect feedback regarding one-time NFT sale of unused EIP numbers. Unfortunately, I could not collect feedback, although I have seen that the issue that is created on EIP's GitHub repository has received a lot of comment. Maybe I will try to maybe tweet about it and collect more feedbacks. But I will get back on this item next meeting. Third is Sam Wilson and Tim Baker will create a meta E for executable specs. We just discussed about the process. So we'll get back to this item next week. Next meeting. Remaining EIP editors to give their view on using executable specs in EIP process. Obviously, we are in process of collecting feedback from community, from EIP editors and all core developers. So we'll try to get back on this one in the next meeting. That's all. Those are listed here on agenda. Anything else that anyone would like to bring up? Thanks, Sam. I see your comment. I have eips.fyi. That's a nice name. Okay, thank you. Definitely will look into it. Any final question, comment for the day?
If we have extra time, we can continue discussing executable spec. I do feel like we need to come to a conclusion on that.
I have a pros and cons list in my doc if you want to go over that. But
Sure. I will tell you why all your cons are pros and all your pros are cons.
sure. Do you want me to share my screen or do you want to just pull it up?
I have it pulled up.
Okay, cool. Walk me through it.
Where should I skip to in this doc if I want to?
Literally the bottom, the last section is their pros and cons. Assuming this is like the main point of contention is like, do we keep the EIP repo? But
okay, so you want to keep the EIP's repo, and just to make sure I understand your position, your reasoning is you like the meme value of it, and I'm not using that pejoratively.
yeah. Meme,
like
meme value. And then, yeah, the two strongest ones are like meme value, and you can use the same number to describe a change across EL and CL. So you don't have like EL 1, 2, 3, 4 and CL 4, 5, 6, 7 mapping to the same feature in a way, like say beacon chain withdrawals or like EIP 4844.
So I feel like the latter problem we could solve without using the EIP's repo. Like we can have a number selection mechanism, and when that number pool is both CL and EL, and for any given number, you may only have an EL part or only a CL part, or you may have both parts, but that's all acceptable.
Yes. Yeah. So then you need, and that's half the problem, but that's also half the burden of keeping the EIP repo is aligning numbers across different repos. Yeah.
So we need a number selection system, and that could just be, create an issue in GitHub and let them use their auto incrementing number for it, or we can have a little website that you click a button and it will just give you a number. Like there are a bunch of ways we can get numbers. And so I feel like let's ignore that half of the problem for now, because I feel like that's solvable in many, many ways. And let's focus on the first part, which is, I think, where the real point of contention lies.
Yep.
So I guess in my mind, I don't, and maybe you can convince me otherwise of this, I don't see huge value in Ethereum changes being memeable. Like RFCs are useful not because they meme well, but they're useful because they specify useful things that are useful to people. And I don't see. Can you help me understand, why do you think?
Yeah. Why are they?
feature? Why do we want
Yeah.
this?
So for example, like look at the Altair hard fork, right? They don't have like any numbers or whatever. And it's really hard to describe to people what happened in the Altair hard fork. So I think like having individually assigned numbers to changes make it easy to say like, you know, change 1, 2, 3, 4 is a gas cost change, or this is like the change to the validator reward curve. So that's like, and that's like the first degree of memeability, if you want, right? Where it's like, because then otherwise it's just like people who are very deep in the weeds who discuss like these PRs on GitHub, and like there's no, there's no thing to hatch onto, and I think that's bad. Yeah, and I think that will be solved regardless. Yeah,
I agree with you on this point. Having a short name, whether that's a number or a randomly generated word, I think anything is fine as long as you have something that's short and concise and you can refer to it by that thing. You know, like, I mean, GitHub has like auto repo names, for example, or just generate a single or a double word. We could do that. We could do numbers. I'm okay with any of those, and I agree with you on this point that I think that's useful.
And then the question is like, why is EIP the right name, right? Like, and I think there, first, you know, Ethereum improvement proposal kind of works with what we're trying to do here, and I think there's, I think like if from the outside, you would want the process to like be as close as possible on the execution and consensus layer, because that's Ethereum, right? Like I'm a bit like uneasy with splitting things too much there, and so it feels like calling it an EIP just aligns those two processes better. And it also, you know, the community knows what it is, and like, you know, the community, like it's been like a year and a half now, and like the EL CL names are still quite hard. Half the place, half the people still use E2, and obviously over time that'll change. But I think like, I think it's better to call them all Ethereum improvement proposals than to call them, oh, this is like EL ABCD and CL like XYZ. Like it's just like it compartmentalizes them to an extent that I don't think is good. And hopefully in the future it's like we want like the modularity at the software level, but I guess I just think it's wrong to like expose this at like the user / community level. From their perspective, it should be like EIP 4844, and like it reduces, you know, the fees for L2s, but then like implementers can deal with EIP 4844 on either side. I don't actually care where the text is stored. So I would be fine in a world where we actually just store the text in the EIP's repo. One thing that's a bit weird technically there with Sam's proposal though is the text only gets stored in branches, and I think that's probably wrong. Like you don't want the actual text to just be stored in branches rather than master, but that's not.
It gets merged though once. I think in Santos,
right, but most EIPs are drafts, right?
Sure, but I think that it's appropriate to store it in a branch if it remains a draft, never makes it forward.
But you want a way to render that. And again, these are not like impossible problems, but like I think there's value in having like eeps.ethereum.org, and if we change it from core to EL and CL or whatever, even that doesn't work though actually, because this is the other thing that doesn't work. It's like if you make a list, you want 4844 to be like a thing and then point to the implementation details on both sides. And like client devs have asked for that in the past, like when we're like discussing withdrawals, for example. They don't just want to see like withdrawals on the CL, withdrawals on the EL. They want to see, okay, what happens at like this higher level of like, you know, this is what like the CL is doing, and then the EL gets this, and then this is where it's actually specified in detail. So this is like the bit I struggle with. It's like if you have something like withdrawals like 4844, it's just like much more logical to like specify at a higher level what the change is, and then link to like the implementation details on both sides. And obviously you can leave some comments and whatnot, like in the implementation details that are a bit more in the weeds. Yeah, that's, I don't know. That's just like it just seems more logical for me to like have the spec be at this higher level of abstraction, and the English, like I guess have the identifier and English description be at a slightly higher level of abstraction, and then link down the specs on both sides, which implement the actual changes. Yeah.
So I think you made a few points in there. So I think the having both sets of things, and in the future, hopefully, if we continue to go down the path of modularity, more than just like this networking layer, there's a consensus layer, there's the engine layer, there's the EVM layer, etc. Having all those share a numbering system, I'm fine with. Having them share a naming convention, I'm fine with as well. So they're all EIPs or whatever. I'm also generally fine with taking the EIP name and leaving the EIP's repo that has all the leftover stuff, which with something else, so there's not confusion. So like turn it into the ERC's repo or whatever. Like I'm also fine with that. I think where I'm in disagreement with you is I feel like if we are successfully modularizing Ethereum, which I really do think we should be doing from an engineering and architecture standpoint, I really think that the only way we're going to scale our development speed is by modularizing things. If we continue down that path, I think we don't want changes to frequently touch multiple pieces. Like if we do pull out the EVM and we have the CL pulled out and we have the EL pulled out and we have like the transaction pooling pulled out or something and all in different modules, in order to maintain the velocity and the benefits of this modularity, we really want them to be as isolated as possible. And so I think the thing that bugs me about your desire to have them kind of like make it easy to have these change sets that cover both CL and EL is I feel like it's encouraging this architecture and development practices that we really don't want to be encouraging. Like they're encouraging bad practices from my point of view, and we should really be discouraging that. And one way to discourage that is to make it hard. So like if it is difficult to have EL and CL and EVM and transaction pool changes that touch everything, then people are less likely to try to touch all of them. They're more likely to do separate isolated PRs that touch individual pieces. And then the emergent behavior, when all those work together, is something that is desirable. But it was done through a series of isolated changes. I think we really want that.
I think what you're describing is like Ethereum 3.0 in a way. I think for the next like 5 years, there's so many things that are going to touch the entire part of the stack that we need to do.
So I feel like we can, most of them we can do modularly if we force ourselves to, and that's what I'm pushing for, is that we force ourselves to do that. Like we like they take withdrawals, for example. Withdrawals are part EL, part CL. That is a thing, but we can divide it up so that the changes are isolated from each other and they don't depend on each other. And I think the EL side would need to go first. I think someone else who's more familiar with it would want to speak on this, but like I don't think we should be doing this as one big change. We should be doing this as two independent changes that then have an emergent behavior, or maybe one that's dependent on the other, but like you don't start doing the second one until the first one's finished. And you might, from a design standpoint, you might design like and architect things more broadly. But when it comes to specifications and defining things, I really do feel like we should be doing this separately. And so even in that short term and over the next 1 to 2 years, when we've got withdrawals and we've got sharding and all this stuff, I'm just really loath to throw away this modularity that we've just finally gained. Like we finally gained some modularity in the system, and we're on a path towards enhancing Ethereum's development velocity. And I feel like if we just merge them like from a specifications level, then we've thrown that modularity away and we're back to bottlenecked on whoever's the slowest developer. And that's really what we need to get away from, is being bottlenecked on, whichever team is most bogged down. And we want to make it so the EVM, for example, can iterate without having to wait for we got a dozen EVM proposals that Alex wants to move forward with, but he can't because he's blocked on the core devs. And similarly, there's consensus changes that I really don't want to be blocked on the execution devs. And so yeah, I think that's when I think about it, I suspect that's where our biggest disagreement is that I really want to discourage
I think
this
yeah.
behavior of one monolithic spec. And it sounds like you feel like that's inevitable and
No.
necessary.
No, I think I agree with you. That matters. I think I think the bit that like I want to avoid the most is exposing all that to the users. It's like in a way, yeah,
I agree with you that we shouldn't be exposing to users, and I actually do think that we need. So we have the execution layer team and we have the consensus layer team. I really do think we need a packaging team at this point. Like we need a team whose job it is to make it so we can shift. I think Peter actually started putting something together like this as a side project, where it was like a thing you could download that would just pick a client, a CL client for you and an EL client for you, and set them all up in one little package. Like I think that should be something that we develop as like an actual thing, and sponsor if necessary, but that needs to exist. And so I totally agree with you that we should not be exposing this stuff to the user at all. But I think the right way to do that is not to turn it into monolithic piece of software, but rather have a set of people whose job it is to bring all the pieces together at the end.
And yeah, anyways, we're at time, but I think there is part of that where it's like within the process of working on it, like 4844, I think is like a really good example here. Like we need to tell users about it and L2 teams about it, and like get people who are not like full-time core devs to engage with this stuff. And so having a single place, it's almost like I would be like, if there was a way to get meta EIPs for these types of change or some things, like I hate having to send people like a random hackmd document that like links to the CL and EL specs.
Why does that bother you? That feels like the right solution.
Because it's just like a really shitty experience. Like it's not, it feels like it's a half-assed like thing that like, no one can find. There's no discoverability. Like I think there's like a lot of value in just having like a document that's like, hey, here's like the overall change, here's the rationale, and like, here's how you get one level deeper into detail. And I feel like that should be like an official thing that's part of the specs, not just like a side thing that like an EIP author puts together. Yeah.
So I feel my gut is that a hackmd is like a perfect solution for that. But it sounds like what you want is something that's more formalized, like a formalized process that has people that review it and maintain it, kind of like we have with the EIPs.
Yeah, and like a loose, I think that process, it's fine for it to be looser than a core EIP in a way, right? Like, because and it's more like a meta EIP or something like that.
I think what you're looking for is like a design document where it's not a specification. It doesn't get into the nitty-gritty details of, this byte goes here, but it's a design document that maybe has some flowcharts, that maybe has some sequence diagrams, that has, lots of text that describes how things are talking to each other. I agree that it would be a very useful document. I'm not against, I don't think I'm against formalizing that process. I don't feel like the EIP's repo is the right place for it, because the EIP's repo, at least currently, is pretty strict, pretty standardized. Like we have bots that expect a bunch of things to be in place, and so I'd rather not have design documents in there, because I feel like there's going to be constrained, and I would want them to be far less constrained. Like really encourage external links. Like I want that to be a thing in a design document. I want lots of images and lots of flowcharts, and I don't want to be constrained to, you have to have these sections and you have to have these header fields, or the bot's going to complain at you. And so I think I agree with you. The design docs would be valuable. I'm ambivalent whether they're formalized or not. I don't see a huge value in that, but I'm not against it either. I don't think EIP's repository is the right place for those, though.
Okay, that's fair. I think I would be fine if we had like anyways, I need to hop, but I think there's probably something there that could work. Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about this again in 2 weeks, I'm sure.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks. This is really helpful.
Well, thank you
later.
both. Yeah, thank you all. See you in 2 weeks.
Yep, have a good one,
everyone.
Bye.